Hey everyone, it's Vice here. Bit of a different one from me today. Not going to be the typical, what's up YouTube, Vice here. I'm looking at XYZ deck. Although that is essentially what I'm going to be doing here. I thought what I might do instead is just a bit of an offline, talk. You and I. We're going to talk about a deck that I've been focusing a lot recently, a few different looks, a few different options, play a few games, and have a bit of a chat. So the other day I watched a video by an online content creator who I watch videos from time to time, and they decided to just kind of randomly boot up an old video game and just talk about both what's happening on the screen and like their memories of playing the game when they were younger and experiences from that time. And I'm not sure that I'm quite going to be able to achieve that with a deck that I've only been playing for the last couple of months, but I'm hoping to capture, and I don't use this word that often, but capture the same vibe. I feel like the word vibe is it's a bit of a nothing word at times. Like, it's almost like a filler adjective. But I also try not to think that way because language changes over time, right? I still use adjectives like rad to describe things, and I think I would probably be the only person to describe something as rad these days. So, look, with all of that being said, we're going to have a look at Grimmsnarl. So, Grimmsnarl is a grim fella, and has been doing its thing for a little while now. It's sitting there in the top tier, and after having a couple of pretty bad tournament runs with the deck, I did finally win a tournament with it. And so anybody who's been following me for a little while will know that I won a particularly large League Cup at the Brisbane Convention Centre, held on day 2 of Brisbane Regionals earlier this year. So it was 110 people, and I won that event with Roaring Moon, another Dark-type deck. And so this time, it was a convention called Collect Fest being held at the Brisbane Convention Centre. And so a company named Aussie Collectibles was running a 1K tournament. So it was a 1K prize pool, $400 store credit to the winner, and the winner was myself. I managed to win with this very deck list that I'm going to show on screen right now. So I know that Pokemon TCG Live doesn't have the most elegant way of displaying decks to you within the interface, but we're just going to work with what we've got here. On the right hand side, might just throw a graphic on screen so that you can take in the list in all its glory. The only real change between then and now, as far as this list goes, is you would replace this rescue board, which is now, effectively defunct now that Air Balloon has entered the format. But for the most part, it is a pretty good starting point. So you can see it's a very no-frills list, and to be honest, it is not mine. I took this list from a particular Twitter post that I saw. I'll put a screenshot or a link in the description, and I gave it a whirl. It seemed to address my concerns with Grimmsnarl, which was that for all the different options that it had, it left me a little disappointed with the consistency. And so with this list being so straightforward, I was able to, take it to a strong finish. Obviously strong. I won the tournament on a Saturday a couple of weeks ago at the 1K. So to give you the brief version of what this deck does, you power up the Grimmsnarl using the ability Punk Up, attack with Shadow Bullet, doing 180 and 30 to the bench, and the combination of damage spread from Shadow Bullet and damage from Frostlass being applied to both sides of the board, and then a very healthy Monkey Dory count at 4 in a deck that already runs Dark Energy as its basic energy of choice, you got a very potent, 1-2 combo with the Grimmsnarl being able to, 2-hit KO anything in format, and then being able to grind down opponents' boards with the Monkey Dory, right? After a few turns of Frostlass, Monkey Dory, and damage built up on the Grimmsnarl itself means that you're effectively one-hit KOing pretty much anything in the format, right? So yeah, it might be a little bit too simple to describe it that way, but that is the gist of it, right? So damage via Shadow Bullet, not to mention a big and healthy 320 HP means that you're withstanding attacks from Pokemon like, let's say, Miraidon EX, for example, and then Monkey Dory throws all the damage back at your opponent. So very, very good. And then a plethora of trainers to help you get there. This deck benefits a lot from Secret Box because you have access to Spikemouth Gym, which is a Marnie-specific stadium that lets you search your deck for a Marnie's Pokemon and put it into your hand, and then you shuffle your deck. So it does a lot to make the deck as consistent as possible, right? Secret Box lets you get Rare Candy and Spikemouth Gym. So you can grab the Rare Candy Stage 2 combo, which is an ever-present, eternal combo in the Pokemon TCG, or has been for a very long time. And yeah, you just get to work. You've got Technical Machine De-Evolution to de-evolve your opponent's Pokemon. Very good in a deck that wants to spread damage counters. And, just enough recovery and just enough of everything else to win the game, okay? You've got Energy Switch here, which is a bit of a oddity, but in this list, the idea is to accelerate more than the Dark Energy that you need so that you can just Energy Switch across to a Monkey Dory. Right. It lets you power up more than one Monkey Dory a turn if the situation requires you to do so. So, very, very cool, very interesting list. I say interesting, but it's interesting for a boring reason, right? Consistency is boring. It's not flashy. You haven't got cards like the Maractus, or you don't have Budju, or even the Tatsugiri that you might see in lists such as I believe it was the second place Japanese championships list that ran a long list of tech Pokemon. There's no Ursaluna in this list too. You got Shaymin to help protect your bench. I think this card is essential in matchups like Raging Bolt, and Iron Bundle to shuffle your opponent's active Pokemon out of the active position, right? This type of effect, it's a spiritual successor to cards like Escape Rope or Warp Point, if you're old enough to remember that card. Okay, so this type of effect where you push your opponent's Pokemon out of the active spot, even though they get to choose what comes active, sometimes that is enough. Sometimes this can win the game on its own. And being able to search for it with effects that get Pokemon, rather than needing an effect which searches for trainers, makes it terribly interesting. Terribly interesting. So, very, very cool card. And so, it was only a very short tournament, only a few rounds of best of one, but I was able to take it. And so, even though it was only a small tournament, I believe only a dozen players or so, it was a very expensive tournament to enter because the convention itself was $40 to enter for one day, and then the tournament was $15. Now, let me tell you about Collect Fest for a little bit. The the convention itself, it's in the name, right? It was all focused on collectibles and collecting. And Collect Fest was, wall-to-wall vendors selling anything that you could describe as collectible. Trading cards, figurines. I saw a stand selling Hot Wheels cars. There was anything that could be sold and packaged and marked up and resold. Anything that you could think of, this place had them. I particularly enjoyed looking at the retro video game section. Something I really like about retro video games is, if you're desperate to play them, you can just turn to emulation or what have you, right? You can find ways to play those games, or digital storefronts that are these days starting to see ports and re-releases of older games. So there is a litany of ways to play older games. You don't have to shell out hundreds of dollars just to play an older title that you might remember fondly. And because of that, these games aren't necessarily going to go to extraordinarily expensive price tags, but just by way of being old and rare, they do carry price tags that are a bit much if you're only a casual enjoyer or just having a browse. If you're really looking to collect, then rare video games, I would say in the grand scheme of collectibles are not that expensive by comparison. You only have to look at the cost of new release Illustrator Rare Pokemon cards to know what an expensive collectible looks like, right? So with that being said, I felt like I was in the 0.1% of people in that hall that didn't really care. I mean, I like looking at old products. I saw some interesting old showpieces. A lot of these stores will carry and put on display products that are a bit too expensive for what they are, but it's mainly to catch your eye and draw you in. There's products that they probably expect to sell or move a lot of on the day, and then they've got something like a Heart Gold Soul Silver Triumphant 3-pack blister for almost as much as a mortgage repayment for me, which was a bit much, right? As much of a crown jewel it would be to own something like that, I don't think it would be a particularly responsible investment for me, if you like. So, and that's what it kind of felt like being in there. I was in a hall of people looking for things to buy, speculating on rising prices and values and whatnot being sold by vendors who, because they've paid to be there, are also looking to make money on the weekend as well. So I keep out of it. I'm not a collector. I'm not an investor. I'm not really that interested in card prices. But by way of having that proximity to all of that, by being involved in the Pokemon trading card game, I know a little bit about it. I don't know much. Whenever somebody asks to look at my binder and wants to work out a trade, I put full faith into them, into making a fair trade with me. I just say, you tell me how much it's worth, man. I'll make the trade based on that, right? So there's a tip. If you ever catch me IRL and you want to have a look at my trade binder, I'm pretty suggestible to the prices of cards, for better or worse. So look, with all that being said, here's the list that I played at Collect Fest. It was only a few rounds of Swiss, but I managed to go undefeated with this list. It was very quite reliable on the day, and it was a peaceful tournament for me. Best of one, which is seemingly a format that I tend to thrive in. A lot of my most recent successes have been in best of one formats, so say what you will about the difference between BO3 and BO1. I'm a BO1 enjoyer. I enjoy best of one, so everybody's entitled to their own opinion about that. I like best of one. So I've been through it a little bit already, and I might be repeating myself a bit, but as you can see, this list is very no frills. There's no tricks to it, no Maractus to help you lock your opponent at various times in the game, no Ursaluna to sweep in the late game. All you've got is the Shaymin to protect your bench, the bundle to swap out your opponent's active, and then just a reliance on consistently setting up your Frostlass and Monkey Dory and whatnot. To move this list from that format, so this was pre-Black Bolt White Flare format, to adjust it for current format, all you have to do is swap this for an Air Balloon. Air Balloon means that you've now got a tool that can help Grimmsnarl retreat for 0 energy instead of 1, which is what Rescue Board would do. So that's the main difference. The difference in the text here being that it gives you free retreat if you're 30 HP or less doesn't really come into it or matter when you have Pokemon that don't have any more than 2 retreat anyway, so not too much to consider there. So very reliable, very good, but lacks the tools to win in unorthodox game states. And so what I mean is like situations where, let's say for example, your opponent manages to take out all of your Grimmsnarl cards, and you're left with no option available on the board. So if you've got a card like Maractus or even Budju or things like that, you can engineer a game state where you can probably still win even without the Grimmsnarl in play, but this one has no such option. It's very reliant on being able to depend on the Grimmsnarl. Okay, so post Black Bolt and White Flare's release, I've started to work on other lists as well. So this one is the one that I mentioned previously. Okay, you've just got an air balloon. That's the only difference there. I've also played with some different ideas. One of our community members, Sinister Cubone, shared with me their list. Shout outs to Cubone. This one has got some other options that I've mentioned already. The Budju for early item lock or even mid and late game lock as well, to be honest. Budju can create some difficult positions for your opponent to have to deal with. Or, let's say, for example, your opponent does engineer a position where you're left without access to a Grimmsnarl on a subsequent turn. Well, Budju can buy you some breathing room, give you something to do on a turn while you try and re-establish a Grimmsnarl, right? Or, in the late game, when your Grimmsnarl go down, at least you've got the big old bear to come in and finish the game, right? Pheasantipity is another option that I haven't mentioned just for the moment, just now, and makes a lot more sense in a deck that, or in a matchup, or perhaps a metagame where your Grimmsnarl are just getting one shot anyway. Okay, so Pheasantipity forever will carry the burden of being a consistency assistant that gives up 2 prizes, and I'm doing air quotes here, only has 210 HP, okay? And then a lot of the same options from before. I suppose the one different thing here, you can see this Pokegear, right? It gives you an option to look for a trainer off an Arven, is the way that I look at this card. So let's say in the mid-game, you've got a reasonable hand, you don't want to just play Iono or Research just because, well, you could just go ahead and play Arven to look for Pokegear and look for a better supporter on a subsequent turn. Okay, and then I've been playing with a lot of the other options that are available out there now. Maractus is very good. It can win games on its own, this Maractus, and having explained this to some newer players that have stopped by the stream recently, the way to think about this Maractus is to focus on the corner attack. Exploding Needles is cool, and, you know, by way of it having 3 lines of text and being, you know, front and center in the middle of the card, and being on theme for the damage counter placement aspect of this deck, you would think that Exploding Needles is the important part of the card. No, it actually isn't. It's corner that you should be focused on. Exploding Needles is a nice additional benefit to playing this card, but being able to trap your opponent's Pokemon, especially in a format where Latias EX exists and incentivizes players to reduce the number of switching cards they have available, Maractus can be a nice way to either stymie an opponent's setup or lock them out of being able to win in the late game. I've also been trying like other weird stuff. I recently added this Klefki. It has not proven itself to be terribly useful just yet, but of course the idea here is to try and lock your opponent's basic Pokemon from being able to use their abilities. So ideally you get it on, let's say you go first and you're able to get it into the active. Maybe you stop your opponent from using Squawkabilly EX. Maybe you stop your opponent from being able to use Teal Mask Ogopon, or perhaps Fan Rotom, right? All that sort of thing. But otherwise, the structure of the trainers hasn't really changed. You know, you make some concessions to be able to add some of these Pokemon, like you can see the energy switch has left the list, for example. So you've got to make room and concessions somewhere in order to fit all of these options in. So now, with all of that being said, we might just load up a game. I'm not terribly convinced by the Klefki just now, but we'll jump into a game and see how the deck goes. Win or lose, I don't really care. We're just going to play have a little bit of a chat, maybe finish this coffee. I'm a bit of a coffee drinker, you know. I don't know how many coffees you have. I usually have 2 a day. And it's about 2:30 p.m. for me, so I don't think having any more coffee would be a terribly good idea. For me, I need to try and sleep at a reasonable time so that I can more fully and properly get over this cough and flu that I managed to contract. That was the other thing that I came away from Collect Fest with. I got sick. Convention flu. They talk about it all the time, right? People who go to these large events and come away with convention flu. Okay, you put like 1,000 people, 1,000 collectors, nerds, whatever you want to describe them as, in this one hall. Chances are somebody's decided I can't miss this and is walking around sick, and so I got sick. It's been tough. I spent a week recovering. I took a week off streaming, and have come back to it in the last week or so, trying to take it easy. And you know, between preparing for Collect Fest, which I knew was coming up, and being sick, basically the last 2 weeks, you can see that my upload schedule on the channel has been pretty slow, which is not ideal. It's not what I want, but you know, real life works that way sometimes. Now, first important decision of this game, aside from choosing to go second, or no, my opponent chose to go first. Interesting, they're playing a Charizard deck of some description. And look at this, the machination of the Monkey Dory in the Charizard list is just a necessity. So, first important decision of the game, deciding to play Iono before Spikemouth. The outcome that I want of this turn is to try and get 2 Impidimp into play. So, we play the Iono first, because we don't know the outcome of Iono. But we do know the outcome of Spikemouth. And if we were to use the Spikemouth first, we would reduce the number of Impidimp that we could draw into by 1. So it's much better to wait, see what cards we get off the Iono, and then make our decision, right? I'm not going to have enough time to go into all the machinations of it, but maybe on their turn I'll expand on that point. So we're going to go Buddy Poffin, and we get our first look at the deck. Now there is a couple of Snorunt. Now I'm told that I'm the only person who likes to go double Frostlass. That's been my one secret weapon for this deck, double Frostlass. We'll go a couple of Impidimp. Oh, let's double check. Okay, only 1 Morgram, but we know we've got 2 Frostlass. I'm also told that I don't prize check enough, and that much is true. When I'm playing online, I'm not much of a prize checker, but I will also admit, playing playing offline, I'm not the most thorough when it comes to prize checking. Mainly, I'll check early game things that matter. So this deck, for instance, you probably want to check what pieces of the Grimmsnarl line you've prized, and Frostlass as well. And that's about it. You don't have to take 2 minutes to check everything. You just need, maybe 30 seconds to check those 2 evolution lines. And then maybe your technical machines. That's probably the other thing worth checking. So, sequencing is probably the hot term of the year, of the decade. I don't know, when it comes to Pokemon TCG. And so figuring out the order in which you should take your turn actions is pretty important. And so what I did there in that first turn of mine was I decided that I want to maximize the chance of either drawing into Impidimp, if not drawing cards that will give me Impidimp, right? So you play the Iono first because we're given the chance to draw into one of 3 Impidimp in the deck. If you take an Impidimp out by way of using Spikemouth first, then you're in a situation where you've only got 2 Impidimp left, and so you reduce the odds that you'll be able to draw naturally into one. Thankfully, it didn't matter. We drew into Nest Ball and Buddy Poffin, and that let us fill the board out quite nicely. I decided to go for 2 Snorunt, 2 Impidimp, and we got the Monkey Dory there on the side. What is our opponent going to do? They look like they're about to knock out the Spudju with Charmeleon. That's pretty good for us because, well, it's not like great, but what it does is it clears the board of one Pokemon and it lets us put down our second Monkey Dory. So let's see how this plays out. It could be a slow setup. So ideally, I hit Rare Candy in the next hand. Put down the Monkey Dory. Now I have to decide, is it worth it to give my opponent cards? What did they do on their turn? They played Crispin. So there is a chance that Crispin is their only supporter. So if I play Research and I don't give them cards, this might put us in a good position. So let's try it. It did mean sacrificing a boss's orders. We got like a lot of good stuff on this turn. We're able to knock out a Charmeleon. Wait, there's an Imp as well? What is this deck, dude? That's freaky. My opponent's getting freaky with it. Alright, Rare Candy into the Grimmsnarl. I'm going to use Punk Up. Grab a couple of energies. One of the things that I'll say with this deck too is I try to leave using Punk Up as late as possible on the turn sometimes, because sometimes you want to be able to draw into the energy to attach to your Monkey Dory, and if you're using Punk Up before you need to, for example, going Spike Myth Gym for Grimmsnarl and then playing Research, you're effectively reducing the chance that you'll be able to draw into Dark Energy, right? So, let me finish a thought from before too. I was not able to draw into Frostlass. We did get the Grimmsnarl, which is great, but not drawing this is a little bit unfortunate. Let's do this. We're going to put the damage somewhere, but it's not going to matter too much because it's going to get thrown back at us by Monkey Dory. So, unusual combination of cards. I can't say I've seen Charizard and Grimmsnarl together, but if that's what we're playing against, that's just how it's going to be. Okay, so they promote the Monkey Dory, and we'll see what happens. So, yeah, I came away from Collect Fest with a bit of an illness. Pretty bad flu, to be honest. It's unfortunate. I was a bit slack this year with getting my flu shot. I hadn't... So, the thing is I got my flu shot last year pretty late in the year. So, I didn't want to, like, get it too soon, but it turns out I probably should have gotten it sooner than later. I got it late into the year last year because I got it maybe a few weeks before I went on holiday on our honeymoon after my wife and I got married late last year. Well, the second half of last year. And then our honeymoon was in December, right? And I'm very glad that I got the flu shot when I did, because I did get sick in Japan. Probably like 5 days in, I got mega sick. I was really unwell, which was not great. But because I got the flu shot, I went through all the motions of being sick and then no longer being sick, all just in one go, like very, very quickly. It was all done in like maybe 2 days. So yeah. Now, let me have a think. We don't really want to risk attacking with Grimmsnarl if we can help it. But I'm also in a bit of a pickle because I cannot evolve into this Grimmsnarl without a Rare Candy. Right? So I'm probably going to have to research here and hope for a 2-card combo. We need either Super Rod or Night Stretcher, which the odds are pretty good. There are, between those 2 cards, there's 3, right? Two Night Stretcher, 1 Super Rod, and we have to hit a candy. Unfortunately, we've used one of them already. So, we're going to research and see what happens. Very close. We hit the candy, we did not hit the Night Stretcher, but that's okay. We're going to try. I'm going to move some damage counters. We do not want to deal with Charizard if we can help it. Now, I still think this is probably worth the gamble, right? It's still worth going for the coin flip and seeing whether we can just almost win on the spot here. So I'm going to try. We'll go Shadow Bullet, 30 over on the bench. We hit the heads. Take out the Charmander. Boom. Couple of prizes in the back pocket. My opponent is still sitting at 5. They promote the Morgrim. And now we're chilling. So, yeah. So unfortunately, I didn't take the time to go get a flu shot. It's it's just one of those things that skips your mind, so to speak. So, you think one of those things that you think about, like, oh yeah, I should do that, and then you just don't, because you 5 minutes later you're focused on the next task and you completely forget about it. So, but that's okay. We're all human. We sometimes we forget to get our flu shot. Sometimes you forget to buy that thing at the grocery store like 3 times in a row. These things happen. Sometimes you forget to check your prizes. Okay, it's true. So I'm pretty happy with playing Grimmsnarl. I didn't know that I would like this deck as much as I do at the moment. But it's been quite good, quite reliable. I've had an interesting time trying to play Stage 2 decks. Namely, like, even though Gardevoir is one of my all-time favorite decks, I'm awful at it, dude. Awful. I cannot play Gardevoir. In tournaments. I'll never forget my Melbourne Regionals run where I tied like 5 times because I lost too many game 1s, won too many game 2s, and between my opponent and I, just unable to complete game 3s. Very frustrating. Let's have a think. What do we actually want here? I'll take boss's orders. I'll take a Night Stretcher, I guess. It's fine. So, Spike Myth, grab back that Grimmsnarl. We've got an air balloon to work with, very nice. So we can retreat. Grimmsnarl here. Punk up for 1 energy. Leave 1 in the deck, you never know. Retreat. Boom. Monkey Dory, Adrenabrain. We want to try and get the 2-for-1 here. In fact, we will be getting the 2-for-1 here. Not bad. Not bad. Shadow Bullet. And then Freezing Shroud. It gets to the KO between turns, which also means that Fezandipity won't be online for them if they happen to have access to that card. So, 3 cards in hand, a Grimmsnarl and a Dream. What is my opponent going to do? It's a funny type of synergy that this deck has that I'm not sure is that good for them, but essentially, when I look at the combination of Charizard EX and Grimmsnarl, you're basically looking at 2 Stage 2 EXs that grab energy from the deck and power themselves up. So in that respect, they're very self-sufficient, but I wonder what the logic is. I suppose Grimmsnarl might be... I wouldn't even say that Grimmsnarl is particularly better early. Like, you're doing 180 plus 30. So I understand it from that point of view. Looks like my opponent has thrown in the towel. They decide to turn the game off and go outside. Fair enough. Probably what I should be doing. Going out for a walk or something instead of being cooped up in my apartment at 2:49 in the afternoon. Although today is quite cold and windy here in my part of Australia, Queensland, so not the most pleasant of walks to go on. That's fine. Hey, we managed to put a win on the board with Grimmsnarl, and we talked a little bit about my experience with the deck recently, so that's cool. We might swing one more game at least, and, you know, maybe try and come up with something new to talk about too. So, I suppose one thing that I can mention, right? I'm always interested in the flavor of Pokemon and the flavor of the way that is expressed through the cards or even the name. And so, like, Grimmsnarl is front-loaded, quite literally, in the name, Grim. So I'm going to choose no here. You don't want to choose to go first. And so Grim, by definition, and we're going to scroll past the AI overview and straight to Merriam-Webster. Fierce in disposition or action. Is that really what Grim... Oh, I've gone double M. Let's go 1M. Although it is double M, isn't it? Let's look at the Cambridge Dictionary definition of Grim. So Cambridge.org describes the word grim as extremely bad, worrying, or without hope. So something might look grim. For example, the future looks grim. Okay? Or maybe having a grim reality. Like the grim reality of an unwinnable board state when you're down 5 prizes. Okay? So, and it makes me wonder about that word and what is my... Maybe I'll talk about like my relationship with that word. Do I think about things that are grim? Is anything grim in my life? I don't think that I experience that word particularly. I live in a pretty nice country, right? Australia. I have a good job. I'm happily married. I own my own apartment. Although I will say that, and maybe this is getting a bit too real, but housing in Australia is looking a bit grim. I'm in a position where I want to move. Okay, so lately, now that, you know, my wife and I, we got married, tick. We went on a honeymoon, tick. We bought a new car, tick. We had to buy a new car because, and I say new, but of course what we did is we bought a relatively new secondhand car, right? You don't buy new. That's just excessive, right? You know, do as you please. I'm not here to say yay or nay, but with how quickly cars depreciate in value, it only makes sense to buy something secondhand. But looking at housing and how expensive things are here in Australia, it's looking pretty grim as far as like what our options are. Now let me just cook for a minute. It's turn 2. We've only got 1 Frostlass, so we're going to split the difference here. I don't know that it's way too late for Klefki to be useful, and without Air Balloon, Maractus is just what we're going to have to commit to here. Ionu. Despite having the Frostlass in hand, I do want the energy. Wow. Okay, not bad. There's no supporter to support our upcoming turn, but I will take this. I'll take the turn 2 Team Evo. The joys of running double technical machine evolution. Sometimes you just draw into it. So, at the moment, my wife and I have spent a lot of time talking, looking at real estate websites, browsing, thinking about what we can afford, talking to financial institutions, having annoying conversations with people about money and all that sort of thing. And we've tried to... We've got a pretty good idea of what we want, or at least an idea that's taken shape. Okay, you never quite know what's going to happen with these things. You go in with some kind of plan, and I think we're the kind of people that need a lot of help to figure these things out. You know, there's like a lot of things out there that people like to try and do, you know, on their own, or don't want outside influence. I don't really know how to describe it, but we definitely want or need something like someone like a mortgage broker to help us and whatnot, to try and figure out what we can do and what we want. I don't know how people can do the whole like buying and selling and settling on a house on the exact same day, as well as settling on a house to buy on the same day. The whole was it the simultaneous settlement thing that you can do to buy and sell houses? It seems really daunting when you're talking about the amount of money that's involved as well. You know, one of the reasons why I want to make the change so much is because of you know, streaming and things like that. The reality of it is, even though it shouldn't really be the most pertinent part of my decision-making process, and it's not, but it's inevitably what I would use any kind of dedicated space for. It would be nice to have a room to put my stuff in. I think that's reasonable. So, let's, speaking of grim, this is a pretty grim-looking board state. I guess I could go for Latias. I guess I could go for Wellspring Mask. But I don't know if... So, in my heart of hearts, I really want to go Boss's Orders, bring this up, and swing for 180. But I don't think I can. We need prizes. So let's do this. Can't put the damage on either of the Terra Pokemon. So I'm going to put it here. We don't care about Fan Rotom. That will get knocked out eventually if we're going to win. Okay. Pretty good. We've got Professor's Research. We've got Monkey Dory. We're going to lose our Frostlass, but we didn't have much say in the matter, unfortunately. So, a bit of a rant about thoughts and feelings about buying and selling a house. I'm, and maybe that's an idea or a concept that's probably a little bit, I don't know. I'm in a relatively privileged position to be able to even have thoughts and feelings about that topic and subject. But anyhow, so things are looking grim. My opponent is quite likely going to Torrential Pump and knock out the Frostlass. They'll be left with an energyless Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. We've got to try and do something with our board. We've got to try and set up, because it is, you know, an Ogerpon, it's a Flareon. It's very real. There's a very real possibility that there's a Leafeon somewhere in their deck, and as I've discovered over my time with Grimmsnarl in this matchup, it's very possible that they'll just go boosted evolution Eevee into Leafeon and immediately knock me out. So we have to be ready for that. So anyway, I'm a little worried, or maybe not worried, but a little unclear on the way forward with trying to move houses, but that's probably going to be the big long-term project over the next 6 months. I would really like to make it happen before the end of the year, but it takes quite a lot. But, you know, with big things like this, it's important to just take things step by step. Start with whatever that first step is. In my case, it's talking to financial institutions, talking to brokers, things like that, and just try and move forward. Maybe that's a good allegory for this game state, right? First things first, we've got to try and set up a board. Be ready to replace this Grimmsnarl with another one. I don't know if that needs to start with playing Super Rod here. Impidimp, great. Monkey Dory, fantastic. We'll attach the air balloon because I don't want to discard it if I can help it. Now, do I play the Super Rod and get back this trio of cards? Actually, I kind of want this. I want the... I'll leave the Dark Energy. I don't know if I want to redraw Frostlass, but we'll just do it. For lack of knowing, we'll just try it. Interesting. We can go for a De-Evolve and get rid of the Flareon, which is not bad. Not bad. It's an interesting line for sure, and not one that they'd be expecting. So a little unorthodox. Go for the De-Evolve. They lose the Eevee, they lose energies on board. Now they could Crispin and knock out our Impidimp, but we had no way to get Shaymin down, so a little unfortunate, but we'll see what happens. There's the boosted evolution Eevee. Very real possibility that we'll be staring down a Leafeon before this turn's end, but we'll see. Even though a board state can look grim, even though a situation or a scenario can look grim, it doesn't mean that you should turn away from it, or that you should walk away from it, or be afraid of it, right? Sometimes the best way to get through these grim situations is to face them head on. Think about what you can do about them, or maybe you just embrace it, right? Maybe you just shrug your shoulders and say, well, it's going to be one of those games, but we'll try our best. And maybe this time it doesn't work out, but maybe next time it does, because you didn't give up. But there is the boosted evolution Eevee Crispin Leafeon EX combo that I alluded to earlier on. A bit tough for us to have to deal with. We don't really have a way to win. But yeah, actually it's looking a bit grim. No! We'll be like 10 damage short. There is a world where we win if we had 10 extra if we had 1 damage counter on either of these Pokemon. It's possible, but unfortunately, I think that they're going to pull off the heist. That's a bit unfortunate. Yep. It's looking pretty bad. Still, we've got like a turn to play with. We've got a turn to play with. We've got Maractus back in the deck. And we've got Arven and Nest Ball. So you know what I'm thinking? Arven. Arven gives us... Do we want Secret Box here? I think Secret Box is probably the play, but what do I have to discard? I have to discard quite a lot to play it, but I think it might be worth it. I think it might be worth it. We'll try it. Secret Box can give me Artisan, which means I don't need Nest Ball. Secret Box. For those, I'm going to do it like this. Yeah, I did have Artisan. We do this. I need this. And we can go Iono. Or we just go research. Because maybe we don't care about the cards that they have in hand now. Nest Ball. Maractus. Night Stretcher. Grabs an energy. Counter Catcher. Grab Latias. Send up the Maractus. Maybe I should have grabbed, I shouldn't have grabbed Artisan in hindsight. My bad. I should have grabbed Spikemouth to grab more Grim. Because we didn't bench Impidimp that turn, right? Yeah. Yeah, I was a misplay on my part. I'm not sure why I was thinking I should have done it that way, but never mind. Maybe I was thinking I needed Snorunt as well to try and sneak some damage onto this Rotom. Now, my opponent has used a Turo already this game. They picked up a Noctowl earlier. Boss's orders means that they're not using Iono. So they're probably hoping that I don't have any way to retreat the Shaymin, but of course we've got research in hand, so we'll see. I definitely should have got the Spikemouth. We research. So, Morgram. Play Buddy Poffin here. Snorunt. Just one. You know, Klefki would also work in this position too, which is kind of funny. Corner. Continue to lock the Latias in place. Now, what did I say about grim situations? Maybe if things look impossible, it's important to hold on to hope as well. You know, if you look at the card text on Impidimp, the flavor text says, the reason this Pokemon causes trouble for those it feels close to is because Impidimp itself gets irritable if it can't absorb negative emotions. Wait, that didn't really do anything for me at all. Hang on. So let's have a look. That flavor text didn't really explain whatever point I thought I was going for there, but never mind. Okay, so I'll just chuck a Monkey Dory on the bench because we're thinning the deck a little bit here. We're going to go Grimmsnarl. I think we've got game. We've got game. Because watch this. Grimmsnarl. Punk up. Double Dark. Boom. Then. Ooh, actually, this is tough. So, it's a question of whether I think I'll draw into Frostlass or energy or not. I have to have a look. Did I mess up? So there's a Frostlass and there's an energy. Equal chance of either card coming up. So I have to choose, I guess. I have to choose. We'll go Night Stretcher. I'll take the Dark Energy. We'll go with the Dark Energy. It can't hurt. And then we'll go Research. If I hit Frostlass, GG. Okay, GG. Frostlass. Retreat. Boom. Wow. Wow. It was looking grim at the beginning of that game, but look at us. The Frostlass means that we're able to get that final 10 damage on the Fan Rotom. And I would say that we just pulled the heist. And then some to win that game. Well, look, we're cresting an hour into whatever I think this video is going to be. It's been interesting to talk about my thoughts and feelings when it comes to Grimmsnarl, grim situations, and just thoughts and feelings that I'm feeling and thinking at the moment. This one's a little bit of a different one. But hopefully all of that was interesting, relevant, I don't know. Tell me if you like this sort of thing. Do you like me speaking to you rather than speaking to chat or anybody else? I know that my uploads are usually in the form of, what's up YouTube? Here's the Pokemon deck, and the Pokemon deck is made up of this, and it does this, and these are the cards that are important. Here's some sample gameplay. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Cheers. Right? This was more of a, hey, welcome back. Let's sit down and play Grimmsnarl and just chat for a bit, And I think I like doing this. I'll get a bit better about talking about things and talking about feelings and experiences and stuff like that. I wonder sometimes if I'm a little bit unrelatable. I think that the way that I've experienced the world growing up, working through my 20s and now my 30s and stuff, I've had plenty of experiences, but at the same time, I wonder if any of them are even remotely interesting to talk about, or whether I'm afraid to talk about those things too. I pretend, maybe pretend is the wrong word, but maybe I'm trying this content creator thing. The most important or the most essential thing about being a content creator is that people will look at you. That's the whole idea. You make a thing on the internet, people will click that thing, and hopefully they're interested by it, or they're filled with joy, or they're enraged, or whatever it is that you're out there trying to do, positive, negative, whatever. I'm not trying to comment on what's good or bad when it comes to content creation, but I think most of the time people tend to latch onto or be interested in people who are willing to open up and share experiences and talk about their life or the way that they perceive the world. And I don't know that I do very much of that. Maybe I do and I don't really notice it, but I feel like people are a lot more open and honest about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're doing with their day-to-day. You notice I'm very vague about the things that I do. People ask me from time to time what I do for a living and stuff like that, and I give them very vague answers because I try my best to be very private about those things, but I probably need to open up a little bit more if I want to be successful at any of these things that I'm doing online. So, and being that I'm a person who's broadcasting and live streaming, there is some maybe expectation or a degree of that people should expect if I'm going to be at all successful at this stuff, because people do want to know a little bit more about the internet person that they're following, day to day, week to week, or whatever, right? what would be the point otherwise if you're not keeping up to date with what I'm doing, or more to the point, if I'm not trying to explain to you what my day-to-day, week-to-week is, right? Otherwise, what I am is Pokemon TCG deck profile robot that comes to you week to week with information that you would seek out, whether from me, from somebody else. And maybe I don't need to be so forthright and upcoming about who I am, because I do try very hard to separate my private life and my online persona, right? As many of you who have watched me over the years will probably subconsciously understand, if not explicitly, right? Well, I'm making it explicit now. So a bit of a ramble here at the end. Tell me what you think. Let me know if any of this was interesting or enjoyable. And maybe I'll see you in the next one, depending on how this goes. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.